Hello, 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 beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of the USL show. Um, we are not going to be talking about Greg, literally Hitler Berhalter today. We aren't going to be talking about, I guess we actually are going to be talking about people being fired. Lots of conversation to be had, a lot of random conversation to be had. Henny Derby happened. Two people got fired. Okay, no, sorry. One of them departed ways. Very different. There was no firings happening there. And listen, there was a banger out in Charleston that we need to talk about, plus predictions, because if we don't predict things, people don't know what we think, even though it's very obvious. But someone who was around last week, but not around last week because Spectrum sucks, and I hope you heard that. Ryan.
Yeah, I'm doing well today. Hopefully the Wi-Fi holds up on our end. But yeah, I guess in other kind of broader news, we're just enjoying the first place in the NL Central Cincinnati Reds for the first time since 2012. So in a literal decade that it's been suffering for this team. So it's good times in the baseball world over there. But the same can't be said for some of the teams we're about to talk about tonight.
Local color is having a great time right now, and Joey Votto still bangs. The world needs to know. John.
Yeah, I saw you tweet. Was it the Joseph Daniel Votto? Am I getting that right? And I
Yeah.
did. I didn't get it until I saw the replay with the perfect call when he gets the home run and gets the full name. But I mean, Cubs guy here. I'm liking how we're playing, but nothing but respect for this Reds team because they are so fun.
I are you enjoying it? The Cubs are like good, but they just keep losing. Nico Horner's fun. Ian Happ's good. Justin
I
Steele's awesome, and then I'm really confused.
I'm just kind of riding the vibes. Like Cubs fans in general are too uppity about. I mean, we lost for 100 years. Take a chill pill. Like we don't need to be good again. Yeah.
And at the very least, we can all at least enjoy the St. Louis Cardinals being bottom of the division on pace for a 99 loss year, which is something everyone can take solace with. But yeah, I mean, just enjoy the vibes and how fun this Reds team is before they're traded away in 3 seasons.
To the Mariners, I'm very sure of it. Listen, let's just bring Luis Castillo home. The Mariners are wasting him. We just bring him back.
Aroldis Chapman needs to come back,
Uh,
get the gang back together.
Other reasons why I don't want that, but if we can find someone else who throws 104, I think I could do that with enough help. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, we're like 3 minutes in. We haven't talked about soccer once. I did open the show with saying Greg literal Hitler Berhalter. So, I guess I just want to throw it out there. Thank you, USL, for not being U.S. men's national team people, because Jesus Christ, that's the worst Twitter to be a part of.
Horrible.
Whatever. Andy, don't you live like near like the Angels, which are actually really good this year? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Enjoy Shohei when you have them. This is a baseball show now. Look, a lot happened. And it would be a little remiss if we didn't start off with talking about a little bit Juneteenth stuff. Um, you know, we posted a tweet yesterday and kind of talking about clubs not really posting or acknowledging, and then there was a little bit of behind the scenes backlash on that, and we're not going to name and shame outright because we don't know whose hands were tied and which individuals, whatever, right? But also, don't let your club be a part of that. And this is kind of a broad topic I didn't really bring up with John or Ryan, and I just kind of wanted to ask, what is a USL club's purpose? Is it to grow the game, or is it to be a part of the community?
I think those goals are inseparable. I think by being a part of the community, you're naturally growing the game. And the only way to be a part of the community is to do it inclusively, to make sure that you're reaching out to every group that could potentially support soccer. And yes, that means supporting Pride, supporting civil rights across the board, and doing what you can to make historically marginalized groups feel accepted and celebrate their existence and their passion. So I would say that community and growth are one and the same, and any club that is failing to be inclusive, is failing to grow the game.
Yeah, I mean, at this level, clubs, I always look at it as organizations need to stand for something greater than just what they have on the field or what they have on the pitch. And just being able to stand for those social causes, those very worthwhile causes, to include everyone as part of the team, as being one club for everyone who wants to support it, is a very worthwhile thing that all of USL, and not just USL, should, just soccer in general, should involve themselves in. That at the end of the day, it's more it's a collection. It's of fans that all kind of share the same feelings towards their team, and that your organization should stand for something more than just winning and losing on the field.
Yeah. I kind of want to transition that to, hey, we had what has been dubbed as the blackest derby in the US, right? And that is the Henny Derby, right? And it's really cool. And as a white guy, this is this is me saying this. This is what the people at Walking 90 is part of the reason I wore their kit today. The things that they have done, Kyle and Elliot and Ebb and all of them, they've done something really cool there. And it's something that I think is really unique. And this is going to be leading to a larger conversation that happened on USL Twitter today. It not only allowed that inclusivity of a black derby, right? Where they did it for the culture. That's the thing that they keep talking about. It's for the culture, for the culture. And that's something they have killed. They nailed it. But it also, in a weird way, like it brings everybody else together to see what that is. As a white guy, I don't know what the quote unquote culture is. I don't know. And they've put it on show. They've put it on, on the forefront and highlighted it. And it looks like an absolute blast. And also, Henny Darby was a blast.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great game. I have a feeling we're going to get into the context of some of the maybe broadcast elements,
Yeah.
but in terms of just the matchup on its own, like you've talked about Madison having that really great back line, the way that Richmond was able to come into this, really use Carlton Belmar and Omar Gordon in the channels to get around that back three and get chances against an elite defensive group was impressive. I thought the second half reaction for forward Madison, where they got a lot more aggressive in that midfield press, focusing on that single defensive midfielder, was good. Stephen Payne, who was obviously one of the big acquisitions, who else to score the winner in this one? Like all of the storylines, all of the tactics, this was a really fantastic matchup that showed what League One can be and what this rivalry has the potential to be across lower league soccer.
Yeah, I mean, Forward Madison and Richmond are both currently in playoff spots right now and could very well find themselves meeting again in the postseason. You're looking at a Forward Madison team who have 2 shutout victories in their last 2 matches. And it just from everything you saw, just with the storylines kind of building up to this match and just everything you saw beyond with the fans, it looked like Madison had a lot of really traveling support for that game, which is impressive on its own, just considering how large the United States is just for any away day travel. That we look at 3 hours and say, hey, that's a close away travel match, when people in the UK would say, what? That's the other side of the country. But yeah, I mean, just everything surrounding this match and just that it was able to have that kind of fan atmosphere and support behind it just shows how much passion there is for these teams and for these leagues.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about Stephen Payne. I do want to highlight him a little bit. And I am extremely unapologetically very biased about Stephen because he's a Birmingham guy, right? He's a guy that I know his dad, I know his family and all that kind of stuff. It's like one of those really fun things that it's fun to see him succeed. But also he's way too good to be in League One. He is this really fun inverted like wing back that if you didn't know, Stephen Payne, by the way, is not a striker. He is not a winger. He is a fullback by trade. They're playing in this 4-4-2, and he cuts up and just cuts in. And this is the same cut in he had been doing all game. He would get the ball, dribble in, take a touch, and go. And he just kind of falls in behind and just just kind of caresses it into the top corner with some really fine saves this entire game too. The woodwork coming up big from time to time. And there's nothing more fun than seeing a guy who played for Richmond last year score the game winner in the Henny Derby and immediately go over to the Red Army and put his hands up and just not sell. It was everything about it as an outsider made me emotional.
And a quick shout while we're giving some love to the players here. Isidro Martinez in the midfield for Forward Madison, somebody who put in the shift in the championship between New Mexico and RGV. I was surprised that he didn't stick in the championship somewhere because he's so bright in the midfield. They really used him as like a deep lying creator when he's been more of a number 10 traditionally, and he has been just hitting the ground running in Madison. So again, like I know the audience for this show doesn't need to hear it that League One is really good soccer, but you're seeing high level teams that could compete at least on the playoff bubble, right? Like in the championship, there isn't that huge gap there. And that's what makes this such a fun and high parity division to watch.
Yeah, I mean, and this is basically the best advertisement for we need to have more cross USL Championship, USL One play kind of in the season because there are USL One quality teams that can go toe to toe with a USL Championship side. I mean, even looking top to bottom within USL One, they're separated by 13 points from first to 12th, and everyone in the top playoff spots right now are separated by 4 points.
And I want to talk about what kind of we're talking about with the broadcast stuff. I know we're a little bit into this, and this is like a nitty gritty detail that a lot of people don't care about, but I think it's really is a big deal. The conversation of broadcasters is a big deal in the USL because we have this ESPN deal, which is huge, right? Because I mean, if we're being honest here, maybe not, but this morning Birmingham Legion was on First Take, right? And they were immediately able to plug, hey, watch Birmingham Legion on ESPN Plus. Because of that kind of connection, ESPN is able to connect everything together and they're willing to promote our league, right? But this also means there's going to be more eyes on the league. And even though that's still a thing, most of these broadcast calls are going to be local calls, or unfortunately, some people just kind of bring in these ringers who don't really know the league that well because they're like, whatever, just put it on there because we have to broadcast. And I'm not saying that Richmond did that necessarily, but it was obvious that with this broadcast, it was somebody that did not understand the derby. And I don't want to mess this up, but Talkin' Flock reached out to this guy. So to kind of understand what we're talking about here, he didn't really fully understand the derby. He talked about, a fan named Elliot and a fan named Kyle, which not fans. Kyle, Elliot, Ebb, and all them have done more to grow this league and journalism in this league than just about anybody else. To call them a fan is just kind of marginalizes them, and it's just wrong. That was one thing. And then just kind of talking about the origins of the derby was wrong. And then to even just say, hey, the loser has to drink the Henny because that is just a punishment of itself. Which, I mean, if you're a broadcaster, I mean, to say you don't understand the culture because, hey, I'm a white guy. I don't get the culture, and I will throw my hands up and admit that. But to say that it's a punishment to have to do that when that's something that was highly celebrated by the fans, and that's one of the most messed up things I can imagine you doing. And Talkin' Flock came out and they got a response, and the guy who did the broadcast apologized. He said he didn't read up on it enough. He said he wasn't as prepared as he should have been. He didn't reach out to the right people ahead of time. And while I do appreciate his openness in saying that he wasn't prepared the way he should have been, also he should have been.
Yeah, I think you started the conversation right in just discussing how so often, and especially this is a bigger problem with League One, these broadcasters just aren't as familiar with the teams, the players, and especially the culture around these clubs where all of us are very online. We're very aware of how these fan bases interact with one another, who are really the key figures that are driving the community and the journalism around a very undercovered division. So we get that. And it's hard to expect somebody who's going and probably going to be calling like a college lacrosse game and professional darts later tonight to say, okay, you've got to know everything. But this was important. It's an important occasion. It's an important rivalry game. And you mentioned it as well, to undersell the impact that the creators of the Henny Derby have had for these teams and for this league is really a disservice to everyone involved. So it's something where you have to see improvement. On a lighter note, I like cognac. Like I would gladly drink Hennessy. I don't know like if he just doesn't have the familiarity or what, but whatever.
I mean, this has been an ESPN issue that we've seen across a lot of their platforms. It almost feels like you could almost have like an ESPN Plus no context for USL at times. So we've seen typos across graphics, and it's not just within USL 1. If you watch any of their college football games in the fall on ESPN Plus, you see they have issues there as well. But just to like not do your own research and just not like put forth the effort to learn about what you're talking about is just one of the largest gripes you can have within. And just being a commentator is just not being prepared. I always think about I think when Peter Drury like posts his like cheat sheets that he has for the Champions League final, and it's like this large poster board of just all the information on players and everything about the game. It just shows that kind of level of preparation that we would all do if we were given the chance to commentate on these games. And it's just kind of what we expect from commentators as well, but it was just really disappointing to just see it so underplayed and just undersold when this is arguably the most influential rivalry within USL period.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen Peyton Gallagher, who calls some of the Phoenix games. He'll post regularly like the fact sheets that he has for every single team, and it's every player's name phonetically. It's color coded. He's clearly putting in hours and hours of work. And it's hard when suddenly you've got these games centrally produced in Tampa or wherever it is, that this guy's just got to pick it up and do the broadcast immediately. It's a tough situation. I'm sympathetic, but at the same time, this was something that you shouldn't have messed up.
Yeah, I think it's more or less. I mean, we've all heard horrible pronunciations of players' names. One of my favorites, and it's still chanted at him, Trevor Spangenberg, was called Trevor Spargenbooge by the Tulsa commentator, and Birmingham fans still chant Spargenbooge at him whenever he's anywhere close to him. So it becomes a funny thing. But when you're talking about a derby, that's when you have issues, because if you're talking about a rivalry, at the very least know the rivalry. I think that's just kind of one of those things that we kind of take for granted the good ones. Like, I mean, I'm very biased. Blake Gardner in Birmingham, I think, does a fantastic job. I've seen his preparation. He's ridiculous, but also not everybody is him, and maybe they should be. But, that is what it is, and that's just kind of a broader topic to discuss because, I mean, hey, the World Cup is coming, and whether we like it or not, there's going to be a lot of eyes on the lower leagues of soccer, and professionalism matters a lot, especially in how you present your product.
Preach.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the other matches. Maybe one of the bigger shocking results, maybe, is your Monterey Bay versus Sacramento. Now, granted, this is still a Monterey Bay that just shoots and scores. That's just kind of what they do. And this is a Sacramento team that I'm not going to say that they've been fizzling out by any means, but they got off to such an insane start that it's not to say that it's not sustainable, because this team is sustainable. It's just the pace that they were going could not last for the entire season. It's just not possible to just be perfect the entire time, right? But look, Monterey Bay put on a master class defensively. You're going to be really hard to find a better defensive showing this year than what Monterey Bay did. It was incredible. So whoever wants to jump in on this first.
Yeah, I think it was really a great strategic game from Frank Gallup to recognize what Sacramento does well They're a team that time and again is better when they're attacking down the right wing. They're consistently getting the ball to Jack Gurr. He's causing those overloads where suddenly you can work it very quickly back to Russell Cicerone on the other side. You're creating that option. So what Yallop did was put Moby Fair, who's a pretty mobile central midfielder, into the defensive line to be that kind of very fluid, quick-moving, reactive option to essentially man-mark Gurr and make sure that Hugh Roberts and Kai Green can stay very central in the box, do their thing defensively, and not have to overcommit out wide. All the while, then you create those turnovers, you force Sacramento to really push bodies forward, and you're able to use a lot of speed on the counter. Alex Dixon sat in this one because Yallop wanted Chase Boone and Sam Gleedle to be just searing down those flanks in the counter attack. And listen, you get one goal, you sit into that 5-4-1, you play deep, and you get the result. Sacramento was the better offensive team over the course of the night, but Monterrey knew what they needed to do. They're very good at executing. They've got a veteran roster with a lot of continuity. I think this is the sort of game that shows you why, yes, they've got the highest conversion rate in the league. It's something we've hammered a lot, but they're down below 20% at this point. They're pretty much in line with what a team could reasonably expect. And they're still going out and beating Sacramento, who coming into the weekend was the best team in the West. Like, this is the game that you can hang your hat on and say, we're for real in this conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was very much the match that we can stop saying for Monterrey they can't keep getting away with this because they were the third team this season to shut out Sacramento, and the last like 2 defeats Sacramento has had at home were shutout losses to Phoenix and Birmingham last season. That this is very basically showing out the blueprint of how do you beat a Sacramento Republic team. And this is how, if you're San Antonio, who they're going to face this week, going into Sacramento, this is kind of what you would follow. And this was a San Antonio team who kept Sacramento scoreless earlier this year. But major props to Monterey Bay. They have games against Miami, Orange County, and Colorado Springs for their next 3. And Monterey Bay has 3 wins on the bounce with a comfortable playoff position.
You know, this is a guy that doesn't get a whole lot of love. And yes, this is kind of a layup because I think he got the assist in the game. But Donner does not get enough love, I think, league-wide. He's a guy that when he was in the Canadian Premier League played winger, and then when he moved over to Monterey Bay, he plays this like true wing-back position that the way that him and Gleedle just kind of play off each other is nuts. I love watching them play, and he's not a big assist getter. Like, I think he might have 2 this season. Maybe I think his other one, what did it come? Maybe like Indy or something. But like the way that he runs up and down that right-hand side, he shuts it down, and you can tell he's comfortable on the attack. And whenever Monterey Bay is going with this 3-4-3 that they did in this match, who cares if you want to defend? I mean, you got someone behind you to cover your back, and then you can fall in behind and recover. The way that he unlocks the entire right-hand side for Monterey Bay, just press play and go. He's so good.
You can't say enough about him. He's just been immense. One of you spoke to the blueprint event against Sacramento, and I do think that in the 2 games they've lost, that being Orange County and now this, it's been Nick Ross playing on that right wing. He's somebody who's very much a slower, more plodding central midfielder. And he's only filling in there because they've taken the knocks, because Rodrigo Lopez isn't able to go until the end of the season. But when you're getting burned down the same side because Ross is struggling in the press or struggling to recover back, it's a bit of a red flag, and it's a bit of a sign that maybe you throw Luther Archimed there, maybe you change up the shape a little bit. It's costing you points, and in a Western Conference where El Paso doesn't look like they're ever going to lose again, and you maybe want that 1 seed when push comes to shove, you ought to make a change, I think.
Something with this Sacramento team, this is something they've been doing all year long, but for some reason, it really rubbed me wrong this match, was just how deep they were sitting, and they were just kind of like, screw it, Herrera down there somewhere. Um, it was weird. And like, okay, especially like Lopez, like at the very base of that midfield, it felt like he was just a center back half the time. And it felt very unserious in a sense of it. Like, we'll eventually score. We'll play defensive. I mean, that's great. You allowed Monterey Bay to 5 shots, but also we know Monterey Bay, they'll score at least 3 of them. That's kind of what they do too, right? Um, it just feels very unserious when we know that they can go out and score. And it's one of those things of, and I don't like to oversimplify, because I feel like we kind of did it with Leo Fernandez a little bit and Lewis Hilton with Tampa Bay, who they're back on track a little bit now. But, I don't want to say you lose one player, Aroro, and say it all fell apart. But also, they've been weirdly defensive ever since he got hurt, and it confuses me.
It's sort of their style that Mark Briggs just trusts this team to sit in a very deep 5-4-1 a lot of the time when they're off the ball. And speaking to what you're saying about Arnold Lopez in the midfield, he sits so low because optimally in build out, they want to be able to use Jared Timmer and Shane Wheat as ball carriers from the wide center back spots. So then Lopez sits back as kind of that safety net. But when you're facing a press like Monterey's, where you've got such speed on the wings from Boone and Gleedle, you're not getting those angles for the center backs to dribble. You're clogging things up. I mean, yes, Monterey is probably the perfect matchup if you're trying to limit what Sacramento does, but I think you're rightly identifying. I mean, listen, San Antonio has the talent to pull off that same game plan next week. Like, how does Sacramento come out, show that they've got a little bit more evolution in them? Because we know they're good, but can they do it in the USL postseason? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, you can't let performances of your opponent kind of dictate how you're going to kind of play your game, because the 2 games that Sacramento has lost this year, you can almost argue that they didn't take their opponent as seriously as they should have, because this is a team that we know is good, that was leading the Western Conference for quite a bit of time. And Kaylor, you had mentioned it prior to talking about it, but their last 3 games were a pair of 1-1 draws against Tampa Bay and San Diego on the road, which, by the way, Sacramento only have 2 road victories all season, and then the loss to Monterey Bay. And they just don't really have the time over these next 5 games to take any of their opponents lightly. I mean, you have San Antonio, RGV, a tough game going into Highmark Stadium with Pittsburgh, Memphis, and then New Mexico is your next 5. Those are some very daunting opponents in that mix.
Yeah, look, we could talk about this match because I think there's a lot of just like little nitpicky things, just how this match is played, because I think they're 2 of the more interesting teams in the league. I'm so intrigued by Monterey Bay. Like, they have become like my obsessive team this year, and I really don't know why. But a team that you should be obsessed with and a match that you should be fully obsessed with is this Charleston versus Hartford match, which, like, what? I Hartford looks good. They get their 3 goals. I think they're up 3-1, and you're like, yeah, this is great. And then Hopino decides, who needs 11 men? He should have. I mean, I can understand sometimes getting the second yellow, and it's like a iffy call. It was just stupid. And then the last 3 goals, I mean, only one of those goals, you look at Joe Rice and you're like, what was that? I think it was that second goal that he conceded. And it was like, what happened there? You think that maybe a defender shielded him. But then the other goals, I mean, it was bangers only. And AJ Patterson only scores bangers. I mean, the goal last year against Colorado Springs, I thought that might have been his best goal ever. And hot take, this one's better, which is gross.
Yeah, I mean, early on, well, Hartford had this week where they went out, I think it was against Detroit, maybe? Yeah, and
3-1.
right. And they came out with this shape where Connor McGlynn was a center back defensively. They played the 5-3-2, and then he'd step into the midfield when they had the ball to create more of a back 4 kind of style. And I think he's excellent. I think Tab Ramos did not tell him what he was supposed to be doing, because that was one of the most disconnected defensive games that I can remember seeing in recent months and weeks in the USL. And then they come out against Charleston. He's looking so much more comfortable in that spot. they've really smartly decided to man mark the Charleston central midfield in a way that they made it so hard for the Battery to build out. And they coast to this 3-1 lead. And the red card changes everything. They don't even look like they want to leave their own half for about 45 minutes of this game. Little by little, the Battery just get that foothold. You saw Wynn and Dodson play a bit narrower just to really compact things. Tristan Traeger was impactful as a substitute, just getting that second forward on. And Hartford couldn't handle it. They just fell apart late on. Full credit to Charleston for having the heart to make that comeback. If you haven't seen the Patterson goal, go watch the Patterson goal because it's unreal. But geez, Tab Ramos cannot set up a defense. Time and again, it is just shocking how this team is squandering the offensive talent that they have.
Yeah, I mean, and this fixture itself is no stranger to having really high scoring affairs. Over the last 6 meetings of these two teams, they've scored a combined 34 goals, which is just insane for just if you want to have pure entertainment for just watching both of these teams. And it's unfortunate they've already played each other twice this year. But yeah, this was a match Hartford definitely should have saw out to 3 points. And it's a team that was kind of desperate for a win. You're going back to May 20th to find their last victory this season, and that was her only home win of the year. I mean, they have Indy 11 and Loudoun to kind of try and recover things, but you're looking at a team who's sitting bottom of the Eastern Conference right now, who's just being let down by their defense so many times, and it's basically down to Louisville and Loudoun as the only teams that they've managed to shut out this season.
I'm going to say something, again, oversimplify it, right? That's kind of the way my brain works. 49th in education. That's what we do, right? Whenever I watch a match of Hartford, I look to see where Matt Sheldon is. And this is not a shot at Sheldon directly, but when you're playing him at right mid, when he really has the pace to be like a wide center back, he doesn't have the pace he used to. What are we doing, right? Sheldon is a good player. He's a good passer, and I know you want to have that passing ability going forward, but also he's good defensively. And frankly, if you're Hartford, you don't need someone to pass the ball. You have attacking talent. You don't need him up there. You need someone who can defend, and Sheldon can do that. And I know what you're probably thinking. Well, Sheldon doesn't want to play right center back. Well, Sheldon doesn't want to lose either. He probably is sick and tired of losing. And if Tab Ramos said, hey, the best way for us to win is for you to play right center back, then by all means, for the love, whenever I'm watching these matches and I see where Matt Sheldon is and I see, oh, is he playing right wing back or right midfield for some reason, they're going to lose. It's just that simple sometimes. I don't understand what Tab Ramos is doing.
And just one more thing. Niall Logue was named the captain of this team in the preseason. He's played every game he's been healthy, essentially. Tab Ramos sat him down after that Detroit game, just took away gave the armband to Elvis Mo, had Logue sit, and then they go out and lay that egg defensively. I'm not going to say that I know anything about the state of that changing room, but boy, that's the kind of decision that you don't take lightly in my estimation. So just tough times.
Yeah, just to like make a captain change in the dressing room is just always a way to just kind of sow discontent within all the players. I mean, we saw it with Steven Gerrard and Aston Villa this past season, stripping Tyrone Mings of the captaincy. And I don't know, this is just, you're looking at a Hartford team who's below a team that we'll talk about later, who sacked their coach today. And you're just kind of wondering if they're not going to win the title this season, but you're really playing yourself out of the postseason now to already be slipping behind in the top 8. And this is a league that lets 2/3 of the teams into the postseason.
Again, this is kind of last line. I kind of wanted to bring up the Niall Logue thing, and I'm really glad you did, John. Elvis Mo, good attacking player, right? When's the last time you've seen a captain not be a center back or a goalkeeper or a defensive midfielder?
True. Yeah, literally homegrown club legend. Like, yeah.
Right. So how often do you see that? And if stripping the center back of captaincy and giving it to attacking player, if that doesn't sum up Hartford this year, screw defense. We goal, baby. I don't know what else does, and I want to give a little love also not only to Charleston but also Detroit City. Detroit City played really, really well.
Detroit City looks like a wagon right now.
I mean, defensively, they've always been good, and now they figured out how to score. And this is before the second half even comes. Like, the league is screwed. And unironically, they look really good right now. So good on them. I wanted to throw that little sprinkle out there. We are going to be talking about kind of a coach sacking in a second, but I do want to just throw this one out there. Miami parts ways with their coach, which is so different than a firing. Whatever. Whatever makes us feel better, I suppose. I talked about it last episode when we did the down but not out kind of episode of why you should be excited about your team. And I don't mean this in a way that I dislike the players or the fans, but I hate Miami because they have squandered talent like nobody else ever. It's ridiculous. They fire their coach, part ways with their coach, and it's probably the right move, but also should have happened a long time ago.
It's this weird thing where, I mean, let's be real, he comes in with the Pulis name. They gave him a year where Miami didn't ever really look great in 2022, but they made the playoffs as the 6th seed and were fine. Like, for a first-year coach in a league where it's hard to be a first-year coach, that's an acceptable outcome. And they invested in the squad. They kept together this core that, for my money, I was giving this a little bit of thought today. You could make an argument that Miami is maybe like the second most talented team in the East, just on paper.
Yeah.
Debatably, but yeah. And Pulis, and to his credit, he has built this kind of back five shape that doesn't give up goals. They're very good defensively, but they don't press you very hard. They're very slow and very indirect in build up. They don't use that talent in a way that makes any sense. Because you can imagine this team being a really a juggernaut in what they do attack wise. They've got center backs that can pass. They've got Segbers out wide, Kyle Murphy up top, Rivas and Sorto. The names go on. I could list them over and over again. These are players that time and again have proven they can do it in the USL and score goals. And Pulis never even looked interested in trying to do that. So this is the proper move for them. And I'm excited to see what happens with Miami, because they could end up with home field advantage with the roster they've got.
And they should. I mean, we talk about just how crucial it was to score goals. And I mean, you're looking at 4 games this year that they scored multiple goals, and they won half of them when they got their victory against Las Vegas, and then when they beat Birmingham for their only 2 wins this season. But then you have a 3-3 draw against RGV, and then a 3-2 loss against San Diego, which just it kind of just sums up everything within this Miami team, that outside of that, they haven't scored more than 1 goal in any of their other games, obviously not winning any of those. And like we had mentioned, this is a very talented team that we were all like, just, and Kayla, you had mentioned this as well, like at the start of the year, we were always like, this team lets us down so many times that we're going to stop picking them in our predictions, that they're just not expected to what we expect from this team. And yeah, they have a tough task ahead of them with the second half of the year. I mean, they basically have a Western Conference road trip with Monterey Bay, Colorado Springs as their next 2 games. But yeah, if you look at their second half schedule, it's a very tall task ahead of them. But if they can catch fire, this is a very talented Miami team.
You say they're really good defensively, but like, I understand that they're under constant pressure because they're attacking talent can't do anything, so their defense is under constant pressure. But I mean, they're constantly leaking goals, it feels like. And whether you can say that's down to backline or down to goalkeeping, I don't know. McGuire started off really hot when he first started playing, and then he kind of fell off. Zendejas has, by the metrics I've been keeping up, might be one of the most bang average keepers I've ever seen. He concedes exactly what you think he will, and he saves exactly what you think he will. And when you're constantly under pressure, that's not the kind of keeper you want. They were very much leaking goals too. I don't
Yeah,
know.
let me correct. They were very good defensively last year, and that's just not the
Yeah.
case this year. They're below average defensively this year.
Yeah. Kind of talking about now about a team that kind of squandered talent, but also kind of not. Look, we should talk about this Lexington Chattanooga match. Lexington just outright played Chattanooga. Chattanooga never looked like they were even interested in joining this match. And Coach Ziggy gets fired after frankly, I was at the Chattanooga versus Legion match, right? A U.S. Open Cup match, and the Ziggy out chants were starting there when they're playing a higher opposition team, and the match was tied, and they were chanting Ziggy out. The fan base didn't like him; they didn't want him, even though he had the scarf. People, I was all in on that. Um, and yes, he wasn't getting enough out of the team and I the watching them play is frustrating because they love just to swing the ball side to side, side to side, side to side, and it's painful to watch because you're like, when are you going to shoot, right? But also, his entire roster was poached from him before the season started, and they never truly replaced any of the attacking talent. They said, hey, we're going to go defensive, which is a wonderful thought, except that doesn't work in League One. It just doesn't. Do you know why we talk about the defense of Ford Madison? Because they have Cheney up top, babe. Like, because they have a striker that can do it. Chattanooga never replaced the strikers they lost. Ziggy's out, and Cash App Weekly's back, and I've never been more excited.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Chattanooga, you hit the nail on the head, is that they go and lose Galindres, Carrera Garcia, Timmy Mel, Mensingen. Like, I could keep listing names. The big addition was Ropapa Mensah, who the last time he played at all in the USL, he scored 0 goals in 14 appearances for SKC2. Like, that's the player you're bringing in to replace an elite attacking core? Oof. And I mean, the week he gets fired is when you bring in Mario Slomis, who's kind of a legend in League One for what he does. That just doesn't make any sense. My predictive model, by the way, has the Red Wolves at a 0% chance of making the playoffs right now. So it is what it is. Like, they tanked themselves with a really tremendously bad offseason. Ziggy didn't do himself any favors, but he deserved more of a shot with some real investment, I say.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Red Wolves team who's been shut out 8 times this season, has the second least amount of shots taken this year, and the league's worst conversion rate. And what makes it all the more ironic is that they still managed to beat the quote unquote best defense in the league in Fort Madison 2 weeks ago, 2-0. But when you have the start that you have had to start the season and no wins away from home in year 5 that you've had, it's really tough to kind of see that moving forward. And like we had mentioned within USL Championship, but more so in League One, when half the teams in the league make the playoffs, there's really no excuse for missing the playoffs in League One, especially if you made the championship game last year.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't fully understand completely the all-in win now situation going on with Chattanooga, unless to make a little bit more sense of this move, look across town. Chattanooga FC, NISA, easily the best team in NISA. They're playing at the same level of Division III soccer in the U.S. I think they're still outdrawing you, and they're good, and you're bad. Where's your product going to go? Across town. They don't have to go that far. That's probably why they made this super reactionary hire, or this super reactionary sacking, is because the team that you created to kind of take the other team's place is losing, and the other team is really, really good. That's really the only way this makes sense. But also, if you're going to be willing to be borderline that petty and that worried and about your investment, why don't you invest in your investment on the field?
Yeah, preach.
So, I think that's it for the matches we wanted to discuss, unless there were any other matches that caught your eye that you want to throw in a little sprinkle of. By the way, USL Tactics Show comes out tomorrow, San Diego. I got really behind. So that will be out tomorrow if you are looking forward to that.
Yeah, just quick shout on that, I guess. Breaking down the shape change that the Loyal brought out against San Antonio. Loyal didn't win the game, but they showed a lot of positive signs. And a move into a 4-2-3-1 really activated Alejandro Guido, who is, for my money, one of the 2 or 3 most fun to watch players in the USL when he's clicking.
Any other matches for this? Any others? No. Beautiful. So I don't fully remember what we said beforehand, and I hope someone does. I do want to start off for sure with the Costa Goodrum Derby. Goodrum is going back, I think, to Memphis for the first time. This one's in Memphis, right? I think I got that right.
Yeah, it is.
And look, this isn't my lock for the week, but there's no doubt in my mind that Goodrum's scoring. And also, here's my question. We talked about Stephen Payne earlier. Goodrum was a fan favorite, but he has clear beef with front office and coaching. How much do you think he celebrates if he scores?
Oof. I think he's going to try to play it classy, but he's also a guy who kind of wears his heart on his sleeve in a big way. Like, I'm kind of imagining like one of those really cathartic shouts that you get, really animalistic, kind of just yelling to the heavens. But
I mean, go ahead, Ron.
I don't know if we've talked about it before. If there's ever a time for an Emmanuel Adebayor celebration in USL, it's going to be this moment if it happens.
Could you imagine, there's the whole thing of taking the jersey off the Messi, holding it up. Instead of doing it to the fans, what if he runs over to glass and I would pay big money because the fans would be like, you didn't celebrate at us. Like, you're cool with the fans. You ran over to the coach. There's nothing I want more than him just to put the jersey in Glass's face for pure chaos. Philip, if you're listening, please.
Splendid.
But someone has to be a winner, or they don't. That's how this game works. Ryan. Oh, no. We made it so far.
Wow. 50 minutes in.
Oh, this is brutal. All right, I'm going to remove them until he's alive again. John.
Yeah, I mean, against my better judgment, as usual with these picks, I went with a draw. Memphis obviously playing so well, but they drew last week with Detroit. I think that there are still some things to figure out with what they're doing in the new look attack without a real proper number 9. I was speaking to what Hartford was doing with McGlynn and that kind of fluid back 4, back 5 shape. Tulsa debuted a similar look with Tommy McCabe, who they just traded for. So say you're putting McCabe into a defensive back 5. You can sort of try to approximate what Detroit did to shut them down. I don't know if I buy that they have the quality to do that, but something is telling me Goodrum is going to will his way to a draw here.
Yeah, this is a really crucial stretch of games that you're looking at for Memphis, a Memphis team who's unbeaten in their last 5, including 4 wins. But you have Tulsa, Charleston, Phoenix, San Antonio, Oakland, and Sacramento as their next 6 opponents. And this is going to basically determine if we find Memphis to be truly for real again this year, or if they're just kind of hang around the mid-table right now. But I do have 901 winning this match at home.
Yeah, I also have 901 winning this one, despite me just desperately wanting Goodrum to win. I don't think I've ever rooted for a player harder in my life than for him to win this and score. But yeah, I'm taking 901 here. I was not at all impressed with what I saw against Orange County. They looked confused against Loudoun. Weirdly enough, the match they looked most confident was that Monterey match where they didn't score. I still haven't figured out what Tulsa's doing yet, and I don't think Tulsa has either. Meanwhile, Memphis is kind of running hot right now, so I am taking 901. I think the next one was going to be San Diego, Pittsburgh versus San Diego. Go ahead, John.
Okay. Yeah, so I didn't know if we were circling back to Ryan, but this is a good matchup. Pittsburgh, it would won a lot of games in a row. Finally, drew on the road to Oakland last week. San Diego, again, as I mentioned with that Tactics Show preview, showing a little bit more versatility in what they're doing with their style. I think this ends up being a pretty tight run game. I don't see a lot of scoring just because Pittsburgh doesn't allow for a lot of scoring. At the same time, something is telling me the Loyal are going to scrape their way to a draw. They just have a tendency of doing so, even if Pittsburgh might be the better team. So, draw here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Loyal team who's drew their last 3 games right now, but Highmark we've shown before is just such a challenging place to go in to play. And to be fair, this is a Loyal team who their last trip to the Eastern Conference was a 3-2 victory over the Miami, but I still think the Riverhounds are just in a little bit better form right now, and with competing with Charleston to go top of the Eastern Conference, they'll take advantage and win.
Not that it fully matters, but a question for you guys: when does Waite leave for international?
Gone.
Isn't that
Well, they just brought in Luis Zamudio, who was Loudon starter last year, and he was team of the week bench on his debut after that Oakland game.
That's what I thought, but I didn't know if
Yeah.
he would be back or not.
Yeah, he'll be gone.
So, that's one of those things that you can maybe circle that Waite is really good at soccer. And so maybe you could circle that, but also Pittsburgh is just a wagon right now. And I believe in San Diego. I still really believe in San Diego, but Lily Ball's undefeated until it ain't. I'm taking Pittsburgh. The next one we were kind of looking at, and was this I guess, either Oakland or Phoenix, or Sacramento versus San Antonio. Do y'all want to pick
Phoenix?
Oakland?
Yeah.
Oakland, Phoenix? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, these teams just played fairly recently. It still has kind of the fire of the Juan Guerra tampering thing. This was a draw that Phoenix controlled last time out, but both of these teams, as we mentioned, are kind of hit hard with the Gold Cup absences. Phoenix is going to lose Kevon Lambert, and with that absence last week, they played a back four for the first time all year. Oakland, meanwhile, Tamakas, who's captaining El Salvador, I think, and then Nabil Hackshaw are both gone. So it's kind of a different dynamic. I've got Oakland winning this game. I think Phoenix just has some things to figure out in that back line. They were much better against Louisville than I expected, and they really took it to them. But something about Noah Delgado, he just has Guerra's number tactically. So roots for me.
Yeah, I picked Oakland winning this one. What's interesting, if you look back at these kind of last 5 games, the teams are almost just kind of mirror images of each other. You have Oakland, who has 2 wins, Phoenix, who have 2 defeats. Both teams have 2 draws, and then Oakland has 1 loss to Phoenix's 1 win. But I still feel like Oakland has been in better form right now. They have 4 matches unbeaten in their time, and I think they'll get a victory here that really kind of puts them into a conversation for being in the top home field advantage of the Western Conference.
I'm taking Oakland. This one I'm pretty sure is in Oakland, and that place is hard to play at. I don't think people who are, especially Eastern Conference people, you may not realize, but Oakland's like kind of a nightmare. When that place is going, it is rocking. Also, this does not get talked about enough, but Blanchette might be the best goalkeeper in the USL, and he's ridiculous. And also, he might be one of the most hilarious looking humans I've ever seen. But yeah,
he's kind of Pep Guardiola looking, but he's got a little bit of like derpiness to the face, whereas Pep is very suave.
He's not even great value. He's like my Sam's Club Pep. That felt mean to Paul, but also watching him before the game, running onto the field before Birmingham, sticking a smelling salt up both nostrils and then just screaming at the top of his lungs. I love that guy. I would do anything for Paul Blanchette.
Moving
Moving on now to what I think will probably be most people's match of the weekend, which is your Sacramento versus San Antonio. Sacramento falling and skinning their knee, and will they get back up and do what they do? Or, hey, San Antonio, they are still a wagon, but they aren't the same San Antonio as last year. Granted, it's almost impossible to be what they were last year. Who comes out on top?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of ties some of the themes of the episode together nicely for me because I've got Sacramento winning. I think they're going to make the midfield adjustments. I think they're going to use a three-man midfield in a 5-3-2, which, if you're looking at the model that San Diego laid down, if you're playing with three proper central midfielders, you can really get some overloads against the San Antonio team. And let's be real, without Shannon Gomez, who, again, another Gold Cup absence, which we should talk Gold Cup and international breaks and all that at some point on this show. But nonetheless, I think Sacramento has the personnel. I think they understand this matchup. And I trust Mark Briggs at Heart Health Park to do what he needs to do to get the Republic back on track for 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, this is a San Antonio team who's going through a really tough stretch of 7 games right now. They're in the middle of it, and fortunately for them, they've been unbeaten in what I would consider the first 3 challenging games of the stretch. But I mean, you have Sacramento, Birmingham, Memphis, and El Paso to kind of finish off this run of games. And even though San Antonio has been managing it well, we still say it's tough to go into to Sacramento and try and get a result out of them, which is why I still think Republic will get a victory here.
I'm trying to find my actual answer because this one was one that I wrote down the name and then erased it like 4 different times. I ended up going Sacramento, and San Antonio fans, before you kill me, Sacramento just doesn't lose at home. I wish I had a better reason than that, but the Indomitable have a voodoo kind of thing going on over there, and I don't know how they keep doing it. That said, I mean, this is another one of those things, kind of like the Charleston match. If San Antonio just walk out with like a 5-0 thumping, would I be shocked? Yeah, but also I'd walk away saying that's San Antonio for you. You know, they're just still kind of a wagon, and they wouldn't shock me with anything. Now moving on down to League One, we have Union Omaha versus Tormenta. 2 teams we talked about last week. Can they get it right? Can they not? What are we going to do here? So far, haven't been super impressed by either team, but I also believe in both teams a lot. Can they figure it out, or does Dramaha still exist?
Yeah, it's very much a stoppable force and a movable object in 2023. I think they're 8th and 10th maybe, but the interesting thing with this matchup is that Omaha will have played on Wednesday going into the Saturday game, whereas Tormenta is fresh off of 14 days of rest as they're finally getting Keziah Sterling going, as they're finally able to get some practice time, fix that defense where they've been a little bit in and out with personnel. In a vacuum, if this was in Omaha and on even rest, maybe it's a different ball game, but I just think Tormenta have it. So 3 points for them.
Yeah, I still think Tormenta is going to be the better team. I mean, if we're talking about kind of disappointments from last season in Chattanooga, I do think you're looking at the defending champions of USL 1, currently outside the playoffs, and even a victory this weekend doesn't even jump them into the top 6 right now. I think this will be a good first step to getting back into the playoff picture. They are unbeaten in 4 of their last 5, although those are 3 draws in that time. But yeah, it has to start here with a victory against Omaha, which is what I think they'll get.
I'm also picking a win over Omaha. And again, I wish I could point to tactic stuff here, right? But sometimes you can just look at a team and tell the vibes are bad. And the vibes are really not great out in Omaha right now. Although their Pride kit they just dropped, oh my God, it's so good.
Good.
Maybe the vibes are high, actually, if they come out there wearing one of them bad boys. I don't know. But yeah, that's I mean, I'm taking Tormenta purely off the vibes. Yeah, that completes this little wrap up or prediction section. As always, you can see everything posted and tell us everything that we've gotten wrong because, well, if it's me, I did. So hey, we'll talk about it all next week. Any final USL thoughts for you guys?
Pour one out for Tampa Bay and Ryan Spalding, who got recalled from his loan by the Revolution. Spalding had 2 goals and 4 assists in like 9 games played. He was up for Player of the Month last month. There's a reason they brought Jake LaCava and Lawrence White back, but it still hurts to have somebody that good and with that great a haircut to go. So RIP.
True. But, for me personally, as the president of the LaCava fan club, I mean, which does make it a little bit harder because I was able to put my full focus into Nick Moon this year, and then he came back, so I don't know what to do anymore. But that's okay. I'll survive. Spalding's gone sucks, but I mean, Tampa Bay will be okay. They'll be just fine.
Oh, one other thing, not to monopolize, that Tulsa Indigenous kit is fantastic.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, they got the scissor tail, if you haven't seen it, with all sorts of, so go with someone to talk about it, but yeah.
Kit season, hello, hashtag. By the way, they just released a new episode that's really, really good, so highly recommend giving that one a watch. And yeah, that was made by a local artist, I think by a local native artist, so it's Tulsa continues just to kill it off the field and everything they do. They are just so great. So shout out Tulsa. I guess USL thought that was also going to be kind of thought, sort of end of the show. So it's more of an end of the show thought. So we'll just move on. Final thoughts for the night, John.
Yeah, I mean, excited to be. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it, so excited to be chatting USL. We're at a really short runtime, but it felt like we hit on a ton of very substantive things. So good for us. We're learning.
I can still make this an hour 20. Don't check
in terms of things, I have a feeling I know where Ryan's going, so I'll cede him some space there. But I'm excited for The Bear coming back on FX. It's basically a show about a guy who inherited his dad's restaurant or his brother's restaurant, and he's learning the pressures of working in a kitchen. It's the 2nd season, very highly regarded critically, very intense. I mean, people who work in restaurants, not me, have said that it's like very true to life. So that's kind of my vibe, but great show. Check that out on Hulu.
Love that. Oh, how was your private indie screening?
Oh yeah, it was super fun. Yeah, I mean, I loved the movie, probably a top 3 Wes Anderson for me. So yeah, love having that experience. Yeah.
Oh, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely jealous that you're going to see Asteroid City soon. I'm planning to see it on Thursday. Almost want to make it a double feature and see The Flash prior to it, just so I can get the full spectrum of, I guess, the quality movies that are out there. But yeah, I guess the 2 that are, at least for what's on my screen slate, very excited to have Secret Invasion coming out tomorrow for just kind of a return to just kind of the Winter Soldier vibes of the MCU, but at least more funny episodes is just Righteous Gemstones season 3 is officially released as well on HBO, and it's just still as hilarious and ridiculous as ever. So I'm excited to kind of have that back. And the Reds have just won 10 games in a row.
By God, they made it scary, but anything to give Alexis Diaz another save, right? Also, to what you put in our private chat, it always cracks me up when the rest of the world finds out that the Cajuns of, Baton Rouge love alcohol. I mean, it always cracks me up whenever people are like, oh my gosh, LSU fans break drinking records. Yeah, that's what they do.
My favorite LSU story is when they played at West Virginia in football, and they basically drank the entire West Virginia stadium dry.
Yeah. Which that's
in Bob Huggins territory. That's impressive.
Rest in peace, Bob Huggins. Whatever
that happened during a Taylor Swift concert. I'd like to let the record show that.
I mean, Huggins being a Swiftie was not on my what do they call that, bingo card? But hey, my mic is just close to the camera because it doesn't pick up whenever I talk to the side. I know I can make it do that, but meh. Um, yeah, I don't know. That one always cracks me up when they went to. I think it was whenever they went out to California for some bowl or like opening game, LSU, and they drank their entire side dry, and so they went to the opposing side team and just started drinking the other side dry. Oh,
Well, what
love
made it better was that was against BYU, and they didn't have the other side at all. So it was still fully stocked. It was just they were playing BYU of all teams. That I was like, I don't know, can you get like a more wide range of just different, just environments and atmospheres of the two teams?
Love that. For me, this one's the final thought. That's kind of a USL kind thought, kind of not. Tomorrow, I'm going to a press conference to interview like Dominique Wilkins, which Dominique Wilkins following me on Twitter and DMing me might be the weirdest thing that could have ever happened in my lifetime. And I don't know how I got here.
That's unreal. I'm so jealous of that. Unbelievable.
I don't. To be fair, what he's kind of brought in to do, for what it seems like, he's with Culture City, which is really cool. Which all they do is like they do what they call the invisible like disorders and kind of stuff. So people with like autism, ADHD, who have like sensory like exceptionalities, they make it more of a safe place to be, an inclusive place to be, providing like headphones, like sensory rooms, that kind of stuff. Really cool stuff that I didn't know Dominic Wilkins was involved with. And I don't know. I just have to sit here and say I'm going to interview him tomorrow, and I'm just like, what? I'm on the USL show right now, and I'm making fun of a guy in Chattanooga for posting his Cash App one good time. Like, how do we get here? Oh man. Let's see. Any final thoughts? Red's good. We're going to win it all. May never lose again. Started off as a baseball show, and it's a baseball show, I guess. I don't know.
Yep, baseball pod.
But that is about it. Check out Kids Season. Check out Protagonists. Read what they wrote about the Henny Derby. I thought they did a great job. Check out all the Protagonist things. And for the first time of night, and also the last time of night, here's Alan.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.